And good evening, everyone. We're here once again behind the screen tonight with Murlo. Hello. How are you?
Sorry, that was literally the worst time to ever sip a bit of water. Hello, everybody.
No problem.
Thanks for having me on.
So good to. Yeah, it's a pleasure and so good to see you. And welcome everybody for this live event. We are going to now pass on the word to David, who's going to give us an introduction about KnownOrigin, the digital art platform, and also the Behind the Screen series. David, after you.
Hi Murlo, hi Serena again. Thanks for everyone for joining the latest Behind the Screens. I'm David Moore, one of the 3 co-founders of KnownOrigin. KnownOrigin is one of the leading digital arts platforms built on the Ethereum blockchain. We discovered new talent and bring them into the digital art space. And tonight we have an amazing artist with us called Murlo. He was brought to my attention by one of our newest team members at KO, Luke. He spotted this artist on Instagram and just had to show me. And then as soon as I saw the level of craft and skill that were going into the animated pieces and the illustration work, I had to reach out to this artist. I'm got so much anticipation to kind of hear Murlo's story, because I know that he does music as well as art. So yeah, without further ado, I will hand back to Serena. But before I do, please go and check out Murlo's work on KnownOrigin.io. And if you have any questions, hit us up on Twitter, which is KnownOrigin_.io, and I will get a bunch of questions over to the guys on YouTube. So have a great evening. This is going to be a good one, so stick around, enjoy. Over to you, Serena, and I will see you guys soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much.
See you soon.
That's all.
Here we go. So, Murlo, it's a pleasure to have you on this Behind the Screen series. We definitely want to hear your story and where your inspirations come from the fantastic art that we've been seeing on KnownOrigin, but not only. So, why don't we start by, telling everyone watching tonight who you are, where you started your journey, and where you are right now, because I think that's also quite interesting.
Okay, sure. So yeah, I'm Murlo. That's my kind of pseudonym. I grew up in the Midlands in the UK, and I've just been drawing since I was a kid. And then when I got to about 19, I decided to go to university. I had the opportunity to go to Brighton, so I went to Brighton to study illustration. And whilst I was studying illustration, I got into DJing, just DJing parties and fundraisers and things like that. And through that, I kind of fell into music and started producing and decided I liked it, and then tried to teach myself. And yeah, and then I just kind of like gave me this kind of career, and I basically went on to produce a bunch of releases and do world tours and develop what I've got now, actually. So it's been like a long curve. I've been producing for about probably plus 10 years, but maybe like more on a kind of professional level, maybe like 6. And alongside that, I kind of developed like a kind of narrative that goes with the music and a story and all these different things. So now I'm based in Manchester. I'm currently in Seoul in Korea, so it's a little bit early for me. So bear in mind, I might be on a bit of a ramble tonight just because my head's in a bit in the clouds a little bit. But yeah, that's kind of me in short.
Thank you.
I guess.
That's great. And, we massively appreciate that you are, live streaming from Seoul tonight or this morning. But yes, absolutely. I was going to ask you, what kind of music did you like, and in which kind of music field did you end up, find yourself leaning towards too?
So when I first started DJing, I DJ'd a lot, and I still do a lot of UK club music. So I started out playing UK funky, UK garage, bassline, grime, a lot of different genres. And my sound as a producer is definitely informed by all that stuff. Over the last, maybe I'd say 3 or 4 years, like I kind of definitely widened my kind of my attention in terms of like sound design and everything. So now, like I released, I think the one release that was like definitely like the kind of big turning point for me was the album that came out a year or so ago called Dolos, and that was made up of like a lot of different like inspirations. So I would say now like I'm definitely more kind of informed with a lot of cinematic music as well. So a lot of like game soundtracks, a lot of like choral pieces, like all types of different things. And yeah, I guess I'll just kind of put it under the umbrella as like electronic music now.
Right. Okay. And what does art or music has to do with art? So what do you see this kind of like merging of the two?
I'd say it's pretty much always been intertwined. And for me, creatively, the kind of the turning point was like managing to make them both work together. When I first left university, I didn't really do much. All of the art that I was doing was kind of slightly more different focused and more kind of personal, because I was working retail in shops and stuff, but I was also DJing on weekends, and it didn't really click the whole thing moving together until a little bit later on when I started experimenting with CGI and more motion graphicsy type of stuff and mixing that with music. And the next thing I know, I was like writing graphic novels to go with music and stuff now. So it's like, for me, it's like really like important, and that's what I've been focused on for the last few years, is just finding ways of being able to let them speak for each other and let them both kind of inform each other in terms of like the experience that the person gets either listening or looking at the art.
Makes sense. Yes, absolutely. And I think, as art forms, these are very connected. And when you listen to music, you probably imagine, or you have a picture in your head. And so by looking at something, you can also listen to the image in a way. So it totally makes sense to me. But in terms of the art that we've seen on, platforms and the way you sort of entered the crypto art space, I'm quite curious to touch on some of the elements that we notice in your work. So some of it, as you described it, is kind of like novel graphic, but some other as a very distinctive features. So I'd just love for you maybe to show us some of your work, and maybe we can talk through some of the art, and you can tell us a bit more about the inspirations and how you combine those different elements together in your works.
Yes, yeah, sure. I've got lots of bits and bobs I can kind of go through. One thing that, yeah, I guess is a bit kind of apparent when you look at kind of, especially when I look at like my past work and stuff, is that it isn't just kind of one visual style, I guess. I mean, I like to think it is as like, as an artist, you should like kind of have a voice or a direction, not necessarily just like a style. I feel like it's very easy to box yourself in as an artist if you refine your style so much. And I think I learned that quite early on, because studying illustration, it was kind of drilled into you almost that you should have this visual style to set you apart from everyone else. And what I found is it just made people just be so focused on how it looks and everything that it doesn't really have it much like kind of material or like content in terms of like thought and stuff like that. So I kind of tried really hard to just keep experimenting with different styles. So I'll probably show you like a lot of different things that I've done, but they all kind of feed into the same world. if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so what I've got here is this is like actually my latest release. So we can just start from the very like kind of newest kind of thing.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And this artwork was made in conjunction with an EP called Primed for Primal, and this is like part of my a narrative of the music that I've been making, where it's set in this universe and it's set in this story. But we could get into that because that's this whole thing. So instead of just getting into that now, I'll just kind of show you some of the prints. So the vinyl actually came with so this is the vinyl, and basically
right. Okay.
This was the backside of the vinyl, and this is kind of printed on. I worked with a designer called DK, who is a great designer, and he kind of helped me come up with the visual style with the text. So he kind of helped with that stuff. And these are the prints that came with the vinyl. So I did four prints, each representing each of the songs. So there's like 4 songs, and basically I wanted to kind of each one I kind of wanted to have like the essence of the track in each of the pictures. And so what I also wanted to do is have like a kind of, I always like the idea of, if I was going to have vinyl, like to be able to have interchangeable covers, or just have like a freedom of like kind of what, like just choice for the person. So basically this kind of design on the outside was printed on top of the plastic sleeve, and you could interchange any of these really.
Right. Okay. So that you can sort of like giving it frame, but by changing the image inside. Yeah.
Yeah. And also I also did some animation to go with it as well, which you'll see later on. Like the stuff that I was making not even that long before this was much more kind of it had much more of a specific style with the animation, and kind of like what I said earlier, I wanted to kind of break out of that a little bit, because this story took place in a kind of slightly different atmosphere. I thought I would kind of have a play with that, so I can actually play one of the videos if you like to kind of
show. Yeah, absolutely. These are extremely fascinating.
There's a cameo for myself. So what I wanted to do with those is I made 4 of them for each track, and I kind of wanted to have just a small piece of the music. So I actually changed the song a little bit just to kind of fit it in, and I wanted to like just have it very like raw and kind of a bit more expressive to my other style that I'll kind of show you in a bit. And I can just show another one. Let's go for this one. It's okay.
Here you go.
So
wow.
Yeah, so those are kind of, so I guess there's that kind of distinction between like kind of more the painted style and then a more painted style animation that's more like, it's quite I've used like kind of visual references that I've kind of painted over, and also I think I used a bit of CGI on that as well, just to get the cloth dynamics, and then I popped that into Photoshop and then traced some of that stuff as well. So like I had a lot of fun with that, and I felt like it was good to kind of just. It did take a while because it was stop frame, so it was like oh god, I don't like to think of how many like nights that I kind of just over and over again. But it's worth it when you see it come together.
Absolutely, yes. I was going to say that every single moment you spend on an artwork and you do it with love, you definitely see it afterwards. So we can see it. So it's all time spent in a good way.
Yeah.
I'm quite curious, to know what's the process that you undergo when you create your work. You combine the music part and the visual part, but how does it actually start? How does it initiate?
Recently, it's been, especially since just before the album, it was a process of making the songs and then kind of almost like dreaming up this like kind of worlds and or like what happens and all this kind of stuff. But there was like a point where I was like, I feel like I could do a little bit more with like a narrative and things like that. So I started developing a story. And I can show you the cover of that. I can just get that up while I'm chatting. And basically, the thing with that, I'll just get the front cover up. So this is the front cover. And basically, what I did with this was I wanted to drive the music in a different way other than just kind of having an idea musically or melodically and then fitting everything around it. I thought, if I create this story, I could have that dictate what the music sounds like. So I kind of written this like small story that was a graphic novelette. It wasn't huge. I think it was like, how many tracks is on the album? I think maybe like 16 or 17. So maybe like a 20, like a 30-page. I should know all this stuff off the top of my head, but I don't. So, but it was about a 30-page graphic novel that I made, and in it there was just the story of a guy that was in a city, and he kind of through this app called Dolos, which was like a kind of self-proclaimed, like very corporate kind of mental health app that he decided to get. It was kind of hijacked by this AI that they were developing, and it wanted to basically kind of spread itself and grow. And in order to do that, it kind of tricked unsuspecting users to take their phones out into the forest and basically help it upload itself onto the mycelium kind of network of fungal spores in the forest, like the neural network. Wow. So like that was the basis of like my whole kind of story. And so they had these characters, and this album in particular is just from the point of view of the person that kind of was searching for help and kind of got tricked by this AI to go into the forest to find that a lot of other these people were tricked as well. And a lot of them stayed, a lot of them kind of figured out what was going on and formed this cult. The main protagonist, he rejects it and goes back into the city. And there's this whole and then I've got this kind of whole story now. So so to go back to the original question, I told you this might be a bit of a rambling thing.
That's totally fine. No worries. It's such a fascinating story. To be honest, I didn't know much about the background story. Now that you're telling it, I think it's definitely for you good to have the story out there.
I could go to a bit more how I developed it, but in terms of the music and how it informed the art, they kind of informed both like each other. So I was like coming up with this story, and I was like, okay, I almost need like a theme to go into like the scene where he escapes into the forest. So I was like, okay, so I can do this. It's going to be high tempo. It's not going to be like necessarily like a pretty song and all this kind of stuff. And that then it started getting these like kind of little briefs that I got for the music, and then from then on, it just felt quite natural to like maybe come up with the music So yeah, Andy says, which one comes first? It's both, to be honest. It's like sometimes it can inform the story as well, where I'd make a kind of, because I've always made music that is it kind of soundtracks a space or somewhere in my head where I could imagine what the scenario looks like. And so a lot of this music that I was making for Dolos, I was also doing field recordings in the Peak District in Manchester. And one instance was I'm into caves. I like caves. I haven't been to many, but there was a cave that I wanted to check out called the Devil's Arse. That's the name. That's the actual name of the cave. But then they had to change it when I think Queen Victoria visited in like turn of the century, because the Queen couldn't be seen going into the Devil's Arse, so they called it, I think, Peak Cavern. But they have all these
that sounds
names.
more reasonable.
Yeah, a little bit more. So they had all these names for just like various sounds, which I thought was really interesting. So when we went in, there was this like stream that's just been. It's just amazing to think that there's this one trickle that has just been happening in this cave for just hundreds of years, because that's just geology, isn't it? And it was called the Devil's Frying Pan because it kind of sounded like oil spitting on a frying pan, the way it hit the rocks. So that got me really kind of like inspired by just like sampling it, putting it into the music. And then also at the same time, I was doing a lot of research with like English folklore, well, like Great British folklore, and mythology that goes back kind of pre-Roman era, because obviously this stuff existed way before all of this. So I got this amazing book that I think it was called mythology. Well, I think it's just like folklore of Great Britain, and it was a Reader's Digest hardback from like the 70s, and it's just jam packed full of just like these old stories, all kind of originating from different areas of the UK. And it also is the origin to a lot of stuff as well, like a lot of the holidays we have in the UK, like wishing wells and things like that. So I found that really interesting, and that kind of set me on a path as well to help inform what I wanted it to sound like and things. So there was songs on the album that were like just kind of like singing, just with not really any synths and things like that, which is not something I've usually done before. So I can show you some of the pages as well. So that was the artwork. So this is the artwork, and it's also the artwork that I recently uploaded on KnownOrigin. We've got like an animated version. And I think that was the last one. There we go. And then this is the graphic novel as well, a couple of pages from it. And again, like my latest EP, I wanted each page to be a track off the album. So it was quite. I almost wanted it like, do you know, like when you go to the opera? I've never been to the opera, but I've heard this is what happens at the opera, where you get given like a kind of almost like a pamphlet or like a little novelette to kind of follow the opera, and it kind of. Yes. And I used to like the books as a kid as well, where you could actually get. It was like a little mini comic, and they would have like a kind of like a soundboard on the left, and you could press. There's like, oh, press the lion roar, and it's like I used to like that.
I used to have one of those.
Yeah, I really like the idea of that. So that's kind of where the idea of this the concept comes from, and to combine art styles as well. Like I said, like I like the painted style, but also the more classic kind of manga art style as well. So yeah, that's definitely like a big direction that my art and my music is going at the moment, kind of storytelling, kind of stuff like that.
Yeah, super fascinating. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's interesting to know where the art inspiration comes from, and to know how these is sort of like coming together with the music, and the fact that you visualize these through the sound, and the other way around as well. It's very interesting, and it's unique, in a way.
Thank you.
Very much so, yes. I would love now to also ask you, the fact that you create those environments with sound and with images, you create an imagery that is in a way folkloristic as well, because it goes back to the origin of like popular and folk traditions. But at the same time, you are in the crypto art space, which is the most cutting edge, probably art experience that you could get these days. So I just wanted to know from you how you feel and how do you think your art can be relevant in such a place when this relates to something that is prior to the Romans.
Yeah, it's interesting. I can remember there was a documentary I really enjoyed called "The Power of the Myth" by Joseph Campbell, and that was
yes, I know
that was really
one.
interesting because that was all about how stories were told, and it was always kind of word of mouth to begin with, obviously, and then it was written, and I always feel like there's obviously going to be this progression, and this is what we've seen with like memes, and we've seen with certain like ways communication has changed, is because it's like you can see a meme and you know the whole backstory. It's almost like you know the lore of where it comes from, like the context. But when you actually go down and sit and kind of try and explain it to someone, you end up telling this big story that where it started and all this kind of stuff. So I think it's like a natural progression to just try and like tell stories in as many or different, or at least explore different ways. Now, I feel like, especially with the crypto art, it's still very new to me as well. Like I can't even explain it to a lot of people when it's like, oh, so what's the blockchain? And I'm like, well, I know what it is, but I'm not intelligent enough to actually explain it in terms that would be entirely correct and also like easy to understand. It's difficult.
I really hope we're gonna get on a day where everyone would know what blockchain is and what crypto art is without having people to explain what it is. But it's gonna take some time, and it's gonna take a lot of us saying that over and over.
Exactly. I love the whole idea of like decentralization, of just like put everything in like a kind of level playing field, and also like for people to be accessible to be for everybody as well. Not. And so I think with that aspect, I think it's interesting, and I get it's exciting, and I like the idea of just creating a universe that kind of seeps into reality as well. Like, and that's why I really like the idea of like making art for the blockchain as well, because it's also thematically what I'm working on with the story. It works quite well as well. Like, I like that kind of combination where things can, like I said, like leak into reality from the story. Even though this is fantasy, I always try and think of ways to kind of combine or at least bring it in, especially with music, because music is turning into such a digital platform now. No one really owns music. I mean, the last one was buying MP3s, which is kind of going out of like the idea of buying, like even downloading MP3s is probably going to be a bit of a strange concept to a lot of like young people that are just getting into like listening to music on Spotify. So I think it's interesting with like wanting to, because I've tried to not just release records. I've tried to release items, but also in order to make, I also want to make interesting digital artwork as well, because that's another thing that really kind of progressively got kind of phased out, is the idea of record art. I mean, most of the way people consume that type of like kind of art now is small pixels, maybe 1,000, 2,000 pixels wide at the largest, just a little box in the corner. Maybe it will fill your screen a little bit, but it's not having it in your hand anymore. So I always want to kind of explore different ways of just like giving people what used to be like a big side of music, like I still collect vinyl, and like part of it for me is the vinyl artwork. And when you get the gatefolds, you get the little inserts, all these little things. It's just been phased out. And you know, it's there's no point kind of, it's easy to reminisce and moan and be like, oh, I wish it could be like that, I wish it could be, but it's not going to be like that. And it's like, you do need to kind of, as an artist, it's your kind of responsibility to explore and push these like kind of boundaries and figure out a way of like speaking to people that doesn't require them to do all the hard work, kind of thing, of like, you know, so it also like sustainable kind of things as well. So I know that like a lot of things aren't sustainable in terms of, you know, you can't produce a record every year. I don't believe that it's a good thing to do. I think so. I like the idea of prints. I like the idea of like objects and things like that. So crypto for me is a kind of a new avenue for me to kind of try and tell stories, and like kind of, yeah, I guess that's all it is really. Telling stories and creating and finding like my,
it's all about stories. Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny, I've not been asked that question.
I keep saying that every single time, but yeah,
it's funny, yeah, because
sorry, go on.
Because crypto is just new for me as well. It's like I still have this whole world of possibilities, so I still have just a list of things I want to try out, kind of thing. So
of course, yes. And I was going to ask you what's coming up next, you know, and I also would love for you to share some of the animation work that you've created, because I think it's important to see how you express yourself as an artist and the different ways you've been exploring techniques and mixing those art and music together as if it's one thing, you know. And we shouldn't really say this is music, this is visual art, and this is crypto art. You know, we have this tendency of like labeling things for us to organize the world and probably make it simpler, you know, to understand. But I think what, you know, the way you challenge the viewer is about thinking it's, you know, having an organic view towards art and the way we relate to what we see and what we experience, you know, through the five senses. So I love that challenge that you place there, and the fact that you use a crypto art space to share that experience with others makes it even more unique, because in a way you're using a blockchain technology, which we often don't see, that it's sort of like connecting through these invisible net all the parts of the story. And as you said, you know, those poras in your story also sort of play in the background. You know, it's like echoing the fact that blockchain and what you're actually telling with your story is very much connected. So to me, it's like a circle. Everything comes back together.
It was a really nice kind of puzzle piece when I figured out what like crypto art was. Essentially, it was always this word that I kind of heard, never really looked into it, and then when I did look into it, I was like, oh, this is like, yeah, this is sick. This is like my universe can have, like, this is obviously the direction that everything's going. So it's like, because my universe is kind of, I call it the Coil universe. I have a music label called Coil, and it's like a lot of events took place in this city to begin with, and then it all moved to the forest, and now it's kind of like this interwoven kind of story, which is both of the. So in a good way to show you, I'll play you one of the. I have two animations I can quickly show you. One of them is the animation that I made to announce my album. So this was kind of pre-story. This was kind of to kind of explain, not even to explain, but just to kind of give a bit of flavor to what the graphic novel was going to be about and everything like that.
Welcome to Dolos. We aim to bring you guidance in your life. Just tell us what you want to achieve. Leave now.
So that was the trailer for that, and then what I'll go into afterwards. There's actually like another thing that I kind of explored during making this album, which was a audiovisual show that I would perform live. So this was the trailer to kind of announce the first AV show. So yeah, that was that.
Wow, that final message was just, you know, that twist at the end.
Yeah, so what that kind of led me on to do this AV show. So I can show you some pictures. So this was a place called Earth in London, and this was a way that I wanted to push, because the way I performed all my music before was just through DJ sets, and it is a bit limiting for what you can do. And obviously you get a fan base that's kind of split into different elements of your work that they like. So they like the club stuff, so they'll come, and then if I'm playing non-club stuff, they'll be like, oh, I was expecting it to be completely different. So there was like a point in time where I was like, I'd love to do something that had my art forefront and then the music was just pushed it along. So it's the opposite to what I was doing all these years. So what I did was, I developed this AV show, which is just all my animations and art, and basically how I saw it was almost like a kind of hour-long like music video experience. But we also had I don't know if you can see here, but this is actually like a mesh screen in front. And what we did is project 2 images, just to kind of give it a little bit of like a kind of 3-dimensional kind of illusion. Yeah. And it was just like the album and a few other tunes, and it's something that I've been developing alongside all my other work, just to be able to kind of again try and tell the story in a different way. And so this is the place that I did it was actually beautiful. It was in on Dalston, called Earth. It's like it's just this amazing kind of building that has all these like old, I guess, like kind of murals that are kind of aged, and it basically fit the kind of place. But I've done this also at Sonar in Barcelona, and I've done it in like around the UK as well. I was going to bring it out to like Asia and other places, but unfortunately the pandemic hit. So
they're on pause. Yes.
Oh, I actually have a little
I'm
video
sure when things will resume. Oh yes, please.
Yeah, which is just someone's phone. So you could, this is I tried to look for. So I did have some videos, but they're all kind of off people's phones and things like that. That seems to like the one of the ones that kind of showed the 2-layer thing. But yeah, that's kind of where I was.
That's
with
very
the
interesting.
animation.
Yeah. I think, it's the first time during this series that we're speaking to somebody like you that, is bringing together a slightly different dimension to what crypto art, often is perceived, and what I like about these talks is that often we consider an image, a video, an animation, or something that has a story, but it's kind of like closed within its end meaning, Whether here it's a continuum, it's continuing to evolve. And I love the fact that you play with the interaction with the audience. You actually place the work on stage and you let the audience interact with it, which sort of breaks on the fourth wall, and it makes that a complete immersive experience. And I really like the fact that you simulate that in the crypto art space. So I hope that everyone tonight is getting the same feeling I do, because it really makes me feel like I'm in that room among those people looking at something that is alive, and you can listen to it, you can see it, but you can actually feel it through your body, the vibrations of the work. So I love to share these, this comment by saying that crypto art and art in general, without label, it is an experience,
Yeah.
Or at least that's how I would love to describe it tonight.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, I think it's in terms of, because you obviously have a voice as an artist. So I see other people's work as like, obviously it's very personal. It's them. So it's like that on the basic level is a continuation. Like no matter what you make is always going to be the continuation of like yourself, like putting yourself in some kind of form, whether it be music or art or something like that. So it's just, for me, I think, yeah, it all kind of, for me personally, it all fit together when I decided to just create this universe. I was like, I'll just create a place where all this stuff exists, and it all has relations to each other, and it's just like kind of exciting for me.
Mm-hmm. There's a question coming from Andy, quite interesting. So to echo what I just said, would you prefer to sell the music and the art as a single bundled asset, so all would understand they are symbiotic? We need to get these in a virtual gallery. Yes, I very much agree with that, Andy. But yeah, what do you think? Would you see this more as a bundled asset, or?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, like one doesn't exist without the other. For me, like this is the thing. Some people obviously have this experience with music where they like to imagine their own kind of story or placing, and I used to do it as well. Like I used to listen to music and sometimes just imagine my own little music videos or my own, where it would exist in my head, if there was a place, if like that this song was playing. But I mean, I have the ability to explain more than just music and just have that other side as well. So for me, yeah, like I've had people say like they enjoy my music and they're not actually very like they aren't aware of much of like the visual art world. And it's the same thing the other way around as well. There's a lot of people who might have found my art, but they don't listen to what like the music that I make very often. So it's, but for me, that's just another kind of voice of storytelling, isn't it? It's just being able to like have like a kind of like a narrator almost over your art. But it's just like music notes, not a voice.
Yeah, it's probably like different layers that you can share, and then it's up to the other to read whichever level, or depending on how in depth they want to go.
Yeah, exactly. I did, because I can remember when I first made my first AV show, like the first iteration of it, I actually had quite a bit of text on it and stuff, and I can remember like going through it, just thinking like, how much do I actually want to explain in this context? And I feel like with an AV show, I'd rather have just the experience wash over you as opposed to having to focus and read and stuff like that. So I took all pretty much all the text out, apart from just like a couple of things being like next, 7 days ago or something like that. But in terms of like the music, I think that's important as well. Is I didn't want to kind of over explain. I didn't want to overcomplicate it for the person that wanted to just experience it, and just having the option to dive in deeper if they wanted to, I think is important. Because how deep do you want to go? Like, do you want to know who this exact character is? Do you want to know like exactly what is happening in the story when you're watching it? And I want that to be available in some context or some way. But it's also like, because I use so many different mediums as well, it's quite fun just to kind of pepper it into different places. So it's like one thing, for instance, that I like, let's say it's like a video game influence, but Dark Souls has always been really good at that. It's like you have the basic level experience where you can play this game and experience it from start to finish, and you get the essence of the game, and you kind of get this kind of story, but it's quite vague, and you kind of piece it together bit by bit. But then if you want to dive in deeper, you actually can, and there's every item in the game has this like kind of almost cryptic sometimes, but like element of story, and you can piece it together a lot more if you want to make that effort, if you're interested in it. And I think it's a lot more rewarding to do that as well than try and like absorb everything at once. Do you know what I mean? So I think what I like to do with like the crypto stuff and the music releases and all these different things is I always see them as like a kind of documentation of the story. They're just like little snippets, or little artifacts, like a kind of a picture that depicts a scene, or just like a slice of story, or even just like a room that was just in that moment of time was where the character was. So, or it could be like a graphic novel which literally explains the story.
Yeah. What it's fascinating about what you described just now is that you have a way of putting yourself in on the side of the viewer, but also on the side of the artist as yourself and other artists and other people that could be in your similar position, and so having a very high sensitivity of what you try to communicate. And it's so important to have those different ways of looking, from different corners to the same thing, so it's quite important. It's a choice,
Yeah. I think it also comes from my background of coming from like as a DJ as well, and having it's a much more communal experience, and it's you'll play a set, but then you'll watch your friends or other DJs play sets. You listen to the producers play music, and it's a lot more of like a communal, like I said, communal experience. Therefore, it's a lot easier to empathize with someone taking in the art that way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. But that's interesting. Yeah. As we are coming to conclusion to this talk, I had this question for you, kind of like what's coming up next. But then Luke asked this wonderful question: has being in Korea given you new inspiration for any future projects? So.
Yeah, I mean, it has already. I've only been here for a few weeks, but I mean, I've done the cultural tours. I've been to some of the palaces and secret guards and things like that, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place. It's insane, like how beautiful and how different it is as well from Manchester. It's funny because I was saying this to my girlfriend. Just walking down the street every day is such a sensory overload sometimes, because it's like we'll walk past an alley, I have to just kind of catch myself because I want to look at it because it's so different. And it's been a really good reset for myself as well, because I've been in quarantine self-quarantine in the UK for maybe like 6 months. Manchester's been hit pretty hard, so it's like just to come out of that, of my own bubble of like just in my flat, to just suddenly like in a completely different culture, in a completely different country, has been like really good for me. So yeah, no, I've already had some ideas and stuff that's been inspired by a couple of visits that I've made to a plant market and things like that, and I've been bubbling with some new ideas for my next project already. So
is there anything you'd like to reveal to us in terms of what's coming up next?
Yeah, I can actually. There's, as I was talking about earlier, I'd like to bring in like the universe, like the fantasy universe, into like kind of real world objects. So I've been looking at various things, and I mean, I do CGI things as well. One of the artwork, quickly show you before. Let's have a look. So for instance, this artwork in particular, this one, this was actually made by one of the processes I used was I actually modeled some CGI characters in this exact kind of pose, and I lit it, and I used that as references for my painting. And from that, I made this, which is actually on KnownOrigin at the moment, which is the actual figures that I made. And I lit it and kind of showed the scene in like a different kind of perspective. So as you can probably see here, it's like the same artwork. And along that kind of thought, I've been looking at bringing, possibly looking at like 3D printing, using like, eco-friendly kind of plant-based resin, just like using themes from like nature and the world that I was like creating with the AI and the fungal network. And I was looking at possibilities of doing maybe like some kind of fungal terrarium or something, or terranium, I think it's called, which is like,
yes.
But that was like the idea that, the story actually progresses. The character actually steals a bit of the AI to bring back to the city to kind of blow the lid on this like kind of conspiracy with the AI kind of growing and wanting to kind of like tell people. So he steals these vials of like fungal matter, and I was thinking I could make these could be artifacts that we look back on now as a story, being like, this is the vial that the scientists got from the forest. And so that's where my head's at the moment, where I just want to just make it tangible and just make it like, it's a lot like you're saying, it's kind of meta and like bringing in like breaking the fourth wall a bit. I'm into all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. That's super exciting, and I can't wait to see these artifacts coming to life. That's extremely fascinating. Well, this has been quite an experience. I wasn't expecting such a great conversation. It was extremely inspiring. So I want to thank you so much for showing us all the great work you made, and all of your ideas, and the storybook as well. It's been great.
Oh, thank you for having me on. It's been really good just to kind of, for me, it feels almost like kind of cathartic just to kind of vent a lot of this stuff as well. Just like talk about it. It's nice. But I'm usually quite an insular person. I don't really talk to many people about stuff. So it's been nice.
It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. So once again, thank you to KnownOrigin and MoCDA for putting this series together. Murlo, it's been a pleasure, and we can't wait to see more art coming from you. Thank you everyone for joining tonight, and we'll see you again very soon.